Coming up right now, we have got our track sponsor, Animoca Brands. Robby Young is going to talk to us about 2021 was the year of the NFT. So what now? Over to you, Robby.
Brilliant. How's everyone doing this morning?
Great.
So it's interesting. I don't know how many of you subscribe to John Jordan's mailing list, but he was mentioning this morning that we were in exactly this same spot 4 years ago, and he was talking about how we had kind of been giving the same speeches, evangelizing blockchain and NFTs, and the one thing that just occurred to me was that 4 years ago we were in the basement, and so we've made it to the ground floor finally. It only took 4 years. I wanted to give a little overview of kind of what we've been up to in the last couple of years. It's been a long time since I've seen most of you in person. We've grown a little bit on our own. We've expanded around the world quite a bit, and so I think we have a reasonable presence in most territories. We've got an active studio business all the way from Asia across to the West Coast to the US, and we're pretty much, I think, set in most different product categories at this point. So we've been doing a lot of stuff across, with blockchain and NFTs. Obviously, we operate on different platforms. So we're active in mobile, we're active in PC web, and then we're also active in console. And that's something new for us because obviously this is Pocket Gamer. So we've been gaming in our pockets for a very long time, but now we're also on the web and on consoles as well. And a lot of stuff that we're doing is cross-platform. So that's an important thing to take note of. And so these are sort of 10 of the major different business subsidiaries of ours focused on different types of games and different ways of approaching what we're doing at the intersection of blockchain and gaming. And I think, one of the things I wanted to do was to kind of remind people of what we've been up to because we're a very active investor in the space. So we've invested in many, many companies across gaming and the wider ecosystem. This includes other types of blockchain businesses, layer ones, layer two scaling solutions, wallets, DeFi protocols, guilds, you name it, because we believe in this sector and we believe in supporting the sector in the greatest extent possible. But I think what happens is that because we're quite active, sorry, there's page 2, because we're quite active in this sector, this gets a lot of headlines and people come to think of us actually more as an investor because you put out press releases every time you do that, and games take a long time to make, so we don't put out as many press releases on making games. But there's a reason behind the madness. And the reason behind the madness is the network effect. And fundamentally, if there's one takeaway that I want you to think about from today is everything we do is about shared network effects. And that's why we pursue a strategy of both building games through our studio business, as well as investing and making strategic investments in other people who make games. Because fundamentally, what we're doing in the blockchain game business is building on top of open platforms. And so we can benefit from the shared network effects of putting together our various game products, whether it's shared staking events with fungible tokens or sort of the holy grail of true interoperability between playable NFT content. We can bring our communities together and slowly build the metaverse piece by piece. A lot of people have been talking obviously about the metaverse for the last 6 or 9 months. And I think from our perspective, we view the metaverse not as a single construct, but it's essentially the bringing together of lots of smaller metaverses, which we used to call games. But the idea is that they're no longer existing in disparate silos where people play this game and that game and the other game, but they're now in adjacent silos where we have the potential to bring them together and allow people to play across different content categories, bring their NFTs from one to the other, or at a minimum, bring their money from one to the other, bring their in-game currency from one to the other. And so they can benefit from those shared network effects. And one of the analogies I always use, because there's concern in the Web2 community, people are always thinking, well, are they going to come and take my customers? If they accept my playable NFTs, then all my players will go over there. But that's not actually something to be afraid of, because the physical world analogy for that is actually what happens in fast food. So if you've ever noticed when you walk through a city, like if you go outside, every time you see a fast food restaurant on the corner, there's probably another one on the adjacent corner. And that's deliberate, because what ends up happening is more people who want to eat food go to that block, and they go. So there's an aggregate amount of traffic that increases because it accrues to fast food corner at the end of the day. And we see the metaverse as exactly the same thing. So what will happen is more people will start to come to shared content experiences as we start to build our metaverse cities closer and closer together. So for example, we have a project called the Sandbox, which a lot of people are familiar with, and it's a UGC environment. And on first glance, you could think, well, this kind of looks like it could be the metaverse. And we say to people, no, it's actually not the metaverse. What it is it's a metaverse. And if we think about the world as a metaverse, we think of the Sandbox as a city. And we hope that the Sandbox is a prominent city like a London or a New York or a Tokyo. But it's just one city, and there are going to be many other cities, and other people are building them, and lots of people in this room are building them. And so we want to encourage people to think about those shared network effects of how we build these cities next to each other, because in the course of our investing activity, I meet a lot of companies. I hear a lot of pitches from people, and I still hear a lot of traditional game companies pitching me things that sound basically like a traditional game, but with NFTs. There's a lot of that. And it's not that they're just trying to figure out a new way to fund their business, because funding games is hard, but it's more that they haven't kind of changed their mindset to think to themselves, okay, now I'm going to create, I've seen many of these, I'm going to create an ecosystem, I'm going to make 5 different games, and people are going to be able to bring their NFTs between each game. But they haven't thought, what about other people's NFTs? What about the other games? How are you going to bring their stuff into your game? What are you going to do when your stuff goes into their game? Because they're still thinking of it like a walled garden, just a bigger walled garden. So I think the shift in mindset is a very important component. I'm going to show you a couple of things that we've been working on, just particularly to address mobile, because obviously this is a mobile conference. So this is a game that we just launched a couple of weeks ago for the Olympic Games in Beijing. And it's built by our studio in San Francisco. And what you see on the right-hand side, some of you may recognize, are those collectible Olympic pins that they have, that all the athletes exchange at each Olympic Games. So we've created these Olympic pins as collectible NFTs. And those Olympic pins act both as a reward mechanism in the play-to-earn game, which is a mobile game, as well as a collection mechanic where people who are just interested in collecting digital merchandise and digital collectibles can participate in that as well. And we've created a marketplace on the web with a custodial wallet system so that people can be onboarded easily with credit cards and not necessarily need to be crypto native, although they can be. Here's a view of the different types of games, and we're actually launching different game experiences within the app over time. We started out with snowboarding and skiing, but we'll be adding more sports over time. We can give you a little bit of a view of what that's like. So anyway, little demonstration that blockchain on mobile is not that scary. Looks like a regular game. I'm going to move on and talk about Arcade. So Arcade is a game or series of games launched by our studio in Central Europe. And the idea behind Arcade was to try to think about how we could approach bridging a very traditional mobile category of quite casual, sticky games and see how we can build in blockchain. Because one of the challenges with blockchain is that often people think of NFT collecting mechanics and they think of more mid-core and hardcore content where people are constantly upgrading and building armies and doing strategy and stuff. So then you start to think, well, how can I bring those kind of collection mechanics into something that's a little bit more light, something that people don't play for long sessions? You know, can we actually incentivize them in that way? So what we've done with Arc8 is essentially put together a series of very casual games, all within one app universe. And what we do is we incentivize players through play to earn rewards. And these are blockchain rewards based on the GameE token. So this is launched by our GameE studio. So as you play, you can earn GameE rewards based on your skill and your ability. So essentially the casual play is grinding, to give it a less sexy term. And then as you grind and you earn tokens, you can then spend those tokens for NFT rewards. So we've created a series of robots called G-bots, and these robots can be earned then through the grinding mechanic in the play. So what we've done is we've combined games that we know people love, that are sticky, that have high traffic, and then given them a reward system that's essentially layered on top as a metagame that allows them to collect GameE tokens and then G-bots. And then the G-bots themselves are going to be the subject of a more sort of mid-core game experience where they can then take those G-bots and use them in the next game experience. Because I think the important thing that you have to keep in mind is the subtext is about utility. So you want not just the collecting mechanic to be for the sake of collecting, but there has to be a purpose for it. So some people will collect them because they're cool looking, but on the other hand, people will collect them because they have utility and they can be used in a subsequent game. So we bring them on a journey, essentially, from starting in a very, very casual play environment to earning GameE token rewards, for which they will have a blockchain wallet. So we will onboard them to blockchain at that point, for which they will then collect G-bots as NFTs, and then they will play in the mid-core experience. So we bring them on that sort of light to mid-core journey along the way, and that's part of the idea. And for those of you curious, this is all running on Polygon. And the last thing I'm going to talk about, because I'd rather just have questions, if anybody has questions or comments. This is not mobile. This is actually on web. But I wanted to show you this because, number one, it looks really cool, and I like to show it to people. But number two, because as we try to keep innovating in the sector and show people what can be done with blockchain games, here is a AAA game that includes blockchain and NFTs. And it's out now.
Currently, we have 2 starfighters available, an assault unit and a buster unit. The assault unit, the CSF tier, is a balanced unit, perfect for mid-range engagement with options for close and long-range combat. The buster unit, the USF Kierkegaard, is a heavy unit, focused on defense and firepower, sacrifices speed and evasion for sheer raw destructive strength.
So just a couple of words about this. So it's a full blockchain game. All of what you saw, this is an actual in-game footage. And all of the robots are NFTs. They're ownable. All of the planets that exist in the universe are ownable as land, in the land metaphor. And there is actually no in-game token that is being, like part of a token presale and things like that. In fact, you need to buy a planet, and you need to mine the planet, and then the planet will emit tokens. And that's how you obtain tokens in the game. Because what we want to do is experiment with, again, trying to build community. As you know, building community is essential to blockchain games. And in this manner, what we hope is that people have to actually invest their time and play and mine the resources within the game, so that if they want to participate in the token economy of the game, they need to invest themselves into the activity. Because by that way, we hope that they will enjoy the experience so much that obviously they will become part of the game community. So that's the focus for Fandom Galaxies. So if anybody has questions, please let me know.
You just took the words out of my mouth. Give it up for Robby, please. We've got time for maybe just one question. Has anybody got a particular question in mind that they want to ask? Yeah. Nina, can you bring the mic to the front? Yeah. Right at the front here. Oh.
Mike, thanks, Robby, for a super interesting talk. You mentioned something right at the very end there, how blockchain games need communities to work, and I think it's definitely something that's very true. And I think if you think about one of the criticisms that NFTs are receiving from the traditional games industry is that they are creating a pyramid of gamers whereby the top of the pyramid are monetizing and selling, but it requires an influx of people coming in at the bottom of the pyramid to buy those assets, to make that game economy. And that happens because those NFTs are static, right? And so the value that's assigned to them can only be on speculation as to how rare they are or how difficult it has been to achieve, to grab. What do you think, what's your perspective on that? Like, is there a way that the blockchain gaming community can try and make those NFTs more dynamic, more changing as to how they are used in the game, and therefore better reflect the effort the gamer has put into making them?
Thank you. I would say it's a very good question, and it's a common question. I think there are two parts to that to answer this question. I think on the one hand, utility is absolutely essential, and I think we always underestimate what it means by utility, because utility is actually limitless. Because utility doesn't necessarily have to only be provided by your game. You can provide as much as, you go to the greatest extent possible to generate utility within your game for those playable NFTs, but to the extent that they're playable in other games as well, that incrementally adds utility. And so then those original NFTs should have more value by dint of the fact that they have more utility. That does not always translate to monetary value. And I think the second part, which I think people don't focus on enough, is the idea behind having digital property rights is so that we don't lose everything, because we're not just spending money into a black hole anymore. It's the fact that there is some recoupable value to the digital items that we own. It doesn't mean that they're going to be worth more. But in my mind, the fact that they're worth something is a win. Because if you imagine that you spend, whatever, $100 a month in games, and then you have them all as, and today you lose that $100 every month in exchange for time, right? But once you've spent your time, that's it. But imagine in a world where you just got $5 back at the end of the month. It's better than zero.
Yep.
And would you be able to convince the world to spend 5% more because they knew they would get the 5% back? Well, if you do that, that's $10 billion for our industry in incremental revenue. So it's something. And I think not enough attention is actually focused on that, because people get too obsessed with the idea that they'll make money off of it. There's a certain audience that appreciates and is interested in that. But just the idea of being able to play a cool game and being able to recycle your content, meaning I'm tired of playing this game, I want to move to the next one, I can sell my stuff for 5 cents on the dollar, that's a win.
Thank you very much, Robby. Give it up for Robby once again. Thank you. Cheers.